My name is David Nolan, and I'm the host of Actuary Voices, a podcast from the American Academy of Actuaries. Today, I'll be talking to Bruce Weinstein, also known as the Ethics Guy. He's the CEO of the Institute for High Character Leadership and will be speaking at the Academy's annual meeting, Envision Tomorrow, which takes place in Washington, D.C. on November 2nd and 3rd. Bruce, welcome.
Great to be here.
We're delighted to have you. Bruce, you're leading a session on ethics on the first day of the Academy's annual meeting, Envision Tomorrow, on November 2nd. Before we discuss your session, tell us how you grew into the ethics field.
Well, I was delighted to see that the conference this year, or I guess every year, is in D.C. because I earned my wings, so to speak, from Georgetown University and the Kennedy Institute of Ethics, right up the road from where this meeting will be taking place. So it's quite an honor to have, spent so many years studying ethics, and now to be able to present what I've learned to the actuarial community is a great honor. It really is.
And how did you fall into ethics? Obviously, as you say, you studied at Georgetown University, but what made you choose that path?
I've been thinking about that question since you mentioned you might ask it. And I think I can trace it back to government class in high school when we were invited to choose any three books we wanted that had something to do with government or politics. And my dad, do you remember the Franklin Mint library books? There are these beautiful leather-bound books with gold leaf. And my dad had that subscription. And one of the books was Plato's Republic in this beautiful, thick green volume. And I'd never read any philosophy. I mean, I was, 16? So I expected it to be this stodgy, dense material. But in fact, it was just the opposite. It read like a great script. Plato wrote in dialogues, which are essentially scripts. But instead of being the typical kind of mundane material that so many stories are made of in movies, this was about things that really matter, where the stakes are really high. And so that piqued my interest. I went to Swarthmore College and decided to major in philosophy because of an ethics class I took, and ended up getting a PhD in it. Like most of the people who went to Georgetown with me, I became a professor in medical school. And after about 5 years, I said, I'd like for the world to be my classroom. I'd like to have maybe a bigger impact and a more diverse impact.
You mentioned Plato, and I studied a little bit of Greek and Latin as part of my high school education. My teachers will be scoffing at me mentioning that. But it is remarkable how the old texts are still so relevant for us today.
Absolutely. And I'm impressed that you read Plato in Greek. Is that what you were suggesting?
Small passages.
Hey, even one. Actually, there was a fellow at a seminar I took who was reading, my age, who was reading along in ancient Greek. And I can't even imagine, what that would be like. But no, English was all I could muster. And that was hard enough, reading Plato in English.
Indeed. So you were one of the few people who managed to transform an ethics degree or an ethics course of study into a global way of life. What led you to setting up your own company and becoming the ethics guy?
Well, after I left academics, I wanted to pursue my oldest and deepest love, which was filmmaking. So I went to South Africa and made a documentary about the Chicago Children's Choir that were touring the country after the end of apartheid. And when I came back to the States, I needed to earn a living somehow until I sold the film. And I knew that I could speak about ethics. So I started pitching myself to different meeting planners. And this is the birth of the internet. So meeting planners weren't used to getting emails. It was a novel thing. And I found myself getting booked a lot. And I also found that I really loved doing it. And I felt like I had a knack for connecting with people. The film didn't work out too well, but so I didn't intend to do this, but the weird thing is I have become a filmmaker because now, post-pandemic, many of my clients are asking not for virtual or in-person talks, but for video training that they can give to their staffs to watch on demand. And so I have become a filmmaker, just not in the way I thought.
And do you find that doing videos is as effective as in-person events or even hybrid events?
They each have their virtues. The in-person event, obviously, nothing can there's nothing like the energy that you get from being in person, and that can't be replicated. But what I have found, especially with our decreasing attention spans, is that it's asking a lot of people to pay attention for 45 minutes, even if you, as I will do in DC, break up the session with small group discussions and individual writing exercises and voting and polls and so forth. But with on demand, you can watch it, the pieces in small chunks. And so one of the presentations I have, which is about zombie ideas and how they can derail your actuarial practice if you're not careful. Each zombie idea is 5 or 6 minutes long. And so it works really well in a video setting where, if you're waiting your line for your double decaf latte, you can watch it with the sound off. So I think that it's good that we're able to do both now.
Great. Well, you mentioned this, so let's delve a little bit deeper into it. You're addressing the American Academy of Actuaries annual meeting, which takes place November 2nd and 3rd here in Washington, D.C. at the Marriott Metro Center. And you're presenting an ethics session. So can you give people a bit of a sense of what to expect when they walk into the room?
First of all, I do my best not to use the word ethics in the title or the presentation of the material because let me ask you, when we see the word ethics or ethical in the news, what is it usually associated with?
Well, now that you mention it, it's generally associated with people who have fallen off the path that we would like to see.
Ethics is usually associated with violation. So it's people doing the wrong thing and being punished for it. And most of us read that, assume, we're not crooks. We look at these articles and say, well, that has nothing to do with me. I'm ethical already. I've actually chosen the two areas of focus in my life that have the least appeal to people, ethics and the harmonica. So I don't know why I chose those two, but they're really off-putting to people. So instead of talking about ethics, what I like to talk about is making the right decisions, using principles that will help you be more successful in your work. It's the same thing. And in fact, leadership talks generally are, if they're done well, really about ethics. It's hard to separate leadership from ethics. So sometimes I'll present it as a talk in leadership, or in this case, I believe we're calling it the ethically intelligent actuary. So then as an actuary, one would look at that and say, that I'd like to think of myself as ethically intelligent, and maybe I can become even better. That's what we want to do. So the way we hook people is by beginning with a quiz. 5 scenarios that you face in your professional or personal life as an actuary, where you ask yourself, I don't know what to do. What's the right thing? And we will be voting. I'll invite people to vote on one of 4 options open to them in each scenario. And they'll be voting anonymously, because I've noticed that voting anonymously increases the participation rate and probably the honesty as well, because you don't have to worry about what other people will think of you. We'll then be able to see immediately how people voted. And in every scenario, I guarantee you, there will not be a consensus. For example, the first one is, imagine that the novel coronavirus has been vanquished, but the garden variety flu is still around. And one morning you wake up and you have it. You have a 104-degree fever and you can barely speak. You feel horrible. But later that day, you have a meeting that you have rescheduled twice already, a really important meeting. What would you do? Would you stay home and rest and not do the meeting? Would you do the meeting via Skype or telephone? Would you go to work and have the meeting but isolate yourself? Or would you go to the meeting but socialize only with the people you don't like? Now, thank you. I'm glad you laughed at that, because we do like to have a little fun with this and throw in, a comic option, which some people do pick. But what's fascinating, David, is that I've asked that question all over the world, across the United States and all over the world. And in every audience, 50% of the people, even post-pandemic, would go to work with the flu. Even in societies where there is paid sick leave, So now that raises a question. Does that mean there are no right or wrong answers in ethics? I mean, if half of the people say they would go to work and half don't, I mean, who's to say what's right? Well, the takeaway will be, in fact, I will show you by the end of this hour that some answers are better than others. Some responses are more ethically intelligent than others. So how do we find out what that is? It's through 5 principles that we already know. I call them the principles of ethical intelligence. These are modified versions of principles I learned as a graduate student at Georgetown from Tom Beecham and James Childress. So I don't take credit for them, but the principles that I'm presenting to the group are principles that were originally developed for a biomedical audience and written in a technical language. I've simplified the language and broadened the scope. So a big chunk of the talk will be seeing how these principles apply in your practice and in your personal life. And we do that through small group discussions. We then reconvene and we'll see how the principles point us in the right direction. So even though 50% of people would, in fact, go to work with the flu, that is not the most ethically intelligent response. And notice how I just phrased that. I've learned how to do this after trying this for many years. I didn't say it's the wrong response, although it is. What I said, it's not the most ethically intelligent response, because I think that the big fear, and I understand this with an ethics presentation, is that the speaker is going to make you feel bad. The speaker is going to be self-righteous and tell you what you're doing wrong. And in effect, I mean, ethics is about evaluating conduct, evaluating behavior and character. But I've learned that you don't have to hit people over the head with it. So that's what we'll be doing. We'll be looking for the most ethically intelligent responses to problems like that.
That sounds fascinating. And in your many presentations, as you say, around the world, have you ever been completely floored by something that people have thought to be totally legitimate?
Yes. What I try to do is to show ethics is not about transforming evil people into good ones. I don't think it's possible. I mean, Bernie Madoff, the quintessential evil person in prison to his dying day, said, "It's not my fault. The problem was the suckers, the investors who should have done their due diligence." He still didn't take responsibility for it. When Harvey Weinstein was convicted of sexual assault, he said, do you know what he said as soon as the judge read the verdict? "But I didn't do anything wrong." He still doesn't believe it. So, teaching an ethics course to Harvey Weinstein or Bernie Madoff. In fact, the one day that I turned my phone off for that's what do they call it? An electronic sabbatical, where you turn so the one day where I didn't look at my phone, it was when the Today Show called to ask me to be on it. And when I turned my phone on Monday morning, they said, if you get this on Monday, it's too late. But if you get this on Sunday, we'd like you to come to the Today Show and talk about a story we've read about, that Bernie Madoff has been invited to teach a business ethics class at Harvard. And I came up, I'm really upset that I missed that, because I had the best one-line response to that. It's, may I share it with you?
Oh, please, yes.
Inviting Bernie Madoff to teach ethics is like asking Hannibal Lecter to give a cooking class. And I said, I thought that would have been great, but it's been lost to history. I the one day I didn't look at my phone, I blew it. But in any case, those are some of the things that surprised me. I will also say that one of the exercises that I like to do is to ask people in small groups to talk about a time when they had to tell someone at work an uncomfortable truth and something good happened. Now, it turns out that in Perth, Australia, Maui, Hawaii, San Antonio, Texas, Toronto, in every group I've asked people to discuss that, someone will say, I had to tell someone at work they had body odor. I mean, we talk about climate change as a global problem. It turns out body odor is as well. Maybe they're related. But in all of these cases, because the information was delivered compassionately, respectfully, the person on the receiving end, first of all, had no idea that they were turning off their teammates. And second of all, they were grateful to know about this so they could correct the problem. And that, I think, is quite a revelation, because what holds us back from giving information like that, telling people that. It's hard to do, but we're afraid that they'll be offended, that they won't like us, they'll be angry. And in fact, the reality is the opposite. They were grateful for it.
That's reassuring in many ways. Yes, difficult conversations at work are often fraught because people don't know how to give the information they need to get over.
Actually, if you don't mind my asking, can you think of a situation where in your professional life you had to tell, obviously keeping things confidential, but where you had to tell someone a difficult piece of information, but you found the courage to do it and something good happened?
Yeah. In a previous job here in Washington, D.C., I once had to tell somebody that their work product wasn't up to snuff, and they'd come in with very with a very good resume, and they were doing work that wasn't good enough. And they sort of sat there and looked at me and said, "You're right, I am kind of phoning it in." And they turned a leaf and they started producing excellent work. They did what they were capable of. So, I thought there was any number of places that conversation could have gone, but it tended to be absolutely, the best for everybody.
Was that a hard conversation to have for you?
Yeah, I was a newish manager at the time, and giving somebody constructive criticism was somewhat new outside a friend relationship or a family relationship. It was an interesting one, but I learned a lot from it, and I haven't shied away from giving constructive feedback ever since.
Along those lines, I've also heard audience members say, "I let someone go, and I was afraid they'd be angry and retaliate." But in every case that was presented to the audience, the person said the fired person came back later and said they were grateful because they were in a job that wasn't a good fit and they found one that was a better fit. Yeah, or worst fears are not realized in a lot of these cases.
Often, yes. It's gone both ways for me when I've had to let people go. Some people have been, turned out of the best for everybody, and other people have been upset, and that's legitimate, obviously.
Yes.
Let me take a moment to remind listeners that you're listening to Actuary Voices, the podcast from the American Academy of Actuaries. On this podcast, we talk to Academy volunteers and leaders, as well as friends of the Academy, about what inspires them about their work, both professionally or as an Academy volunteer. Please subscribe to Actuary Voices on your preferred podcast platform. So as you said, you're speaking at our annual meeting. So how many of these kind of events do you do a year?
It changes from year to year. And since the pandemic started, I've been doing more virtual events. And in fact, when I'm asked to do a virtual event, I ask the client, instead of doing it live, can I make a recording? Because then it takes the heat off. Like right now, for all of us, you, Tim, and me on this podcast, the heat is off because it's not live. If it were live, we'd be really concerned about like the noise outside or a technological problem, the signal dropping. But with a recorded program, you don't have to do that. And then the client has a month to watch it. So I'm doing many more of those. But I am resuming international travel. And I have to say that it is such an honor and a privilege. I really mean this, to be flown business class to Abu Dhabi or Perth or Cairo to talk about something I would probably do for free if I could. And because for one thing, even, especially with a virtual event, you don't get a sense of the culture. You're obviously not partaking of the folks of their food. And I've been invited to people's homes. That's something that you just can't get outside of travel. And although I will say, like for this talk in Perth, if you drilled a hole through planet Earth from New York City straight through, do you know where you would end up?
I'm imagining pretty close to Perth.
Exactly. Now, because when I was raised, it was like you'll end up in China. I don't know where that came from because it's not even close. But yes, it's Perth. So I was flown for a 1-hour talk from New York City, halfway around the world, and then halfway back for a 1-hour talk. Now, that's a lot of travel and that's a lot of downtime. And of course, you come back. Well, Cairo is so polluted. I came back with a horrible cough. And I remember being in a restaurant there, and the person lit up next to me, and I looked over and I was about to say, "It's a restaurant. You can't smoke in a restaurant." And then I thought, well, in Egypt you can, so shut up. But I really can't wait to do more international travel. Now, traveling 3/4 of the way across the country for very little money to speak. I mean, when I began, I remember one of my first talks. It was to 12 physicians in Orange County, California, on a Saturday morning for $500, and I was grateful to get the gig, and I learned a lot from it. But I don't want to do those too much anymore now.
Sure. Yeah. You want to make it worth your while, and you want to have as many people as possible so that it's as interesting and diverse.
And you know what else? I can see why comics get addicted to laughter, because the first time I spoke to 6,000 people, it was in the Fort Lauderdale Convention Center. And there is something unbelievable about telling a joke and hearing 6,000 people laugh. I mean, and it's really, you think like, oh my gosh, they like me. No, you just made them feel good for that moment. Don't confuse the two, but it's still a great feeling to hear 6,000 people laugh. At most you get a couple of folks. So that is an amazing experience that I wish more people could have, because, wow. It feels great.
No, I can imagine it does. So one of the things I always look at when I'm hiring people or when looking at speakers and so on is what their special interests are. And yours is kind of an eclectic one. You play the spoons and the drums,
yes,
and the harmonica. And in fact, we had to delay the recording of this podcast because you were at a week-long harmonica conference, if I recall correctly.
Yeah.
So tell us a bit about that. What got you into that?
If you were to ask 20 people how did they choose their musical instrument, you'd get 20 different responses. My dad had this album of Dizzy Gillespie, and I fell in love with the trumpet or whatever it was. But for me, actually before the pandemic started, there was a clue on Jeopardy, and the answer was, what is the harmonica? And it flicked a switch in my head. I grew up playing drums, and so I'm used to studying an instrument. But drums are a rhythm instrument. I've never learned how to play a melody. So something about that appealed to me. Then when the pandemic started, I thought this is a good time to look into that. And so I began online lessons, and these lessons that I do twice a month with David Barrett via Skype are the highlights of the week for me. When I have them, and it's just for 1 hour or the amount of time I practice, the whole world becomes reduced to these 10 holes and how to make music out of them. That's it. It's so great not to worry about all of the other things that one can get caught up in, and to just focus on this. And one of the things I learned through the harmonica convention you mentioned is that you're never too old to start. I mean, I started when I was, I guess, 59, and there were people there who started in their late 60s. And I've heard people say, oh, I'm too old to pick up an instrument. You're not. You're never too old. So it's been a joy. It's also really humbling to try to do something that you're horrible at, because, it's too easy like to rest on your laurels, like, oh, I give great talks and I can play drums and this and that. But to try to do something and not even be able to get a note out of it, it makes you realize that there's always more to learn.
Too true. And are you at a stage yet where you work the harmonica into your presentation?
I'm not. I don't have that much contempt for my audiences, so I try. And it's funny because I do play the spoons well, and I've talked with colleagues of mine who are also professional speakers. Some have encouraged me to do it, but I thought, well, for one thing, with ethics, there's always a danger, I guess, of cheapening the message. And if I play the spoons at the end of the hour, what are people going to remember from the talk? That guy who played the spoons. How neat. And that's not really what I want people to take away. Now, if there's a happy hour afterwards and we're all enjoying getting to know each other socially, that might be a good time to do it. But I can't think of, maybe you could help me, or maybe someone listening to this could help me think of a way of incorporating it so that it's organic to the material.
Mm-hmm.
So not yet. Soon, maybe not yet.
There's a challenge to our listeners, certainly, and also to the folks who'll attend the event in person.
I just want to say, so please, if you're thinking about not coming to my talk and you're saying like, I don't want to hear someone play the spoons, don't worry about it. I'm not going to.
Well, that's interesting. You should say that, because I was going to ask you to give us a minute or so on why people should attend both your events and the Academy's conference.
Okay. So the number one reason to attend my event is because they won't hear me playing spoons, but also because, like with the flu example. Now, I think a lot of folks, well, we all have dealt with that. And if we haven't dealt with it ourselves, a team member has, or a direct report comes to work and they have the flu and we wonder, should I send them home, or what's the right thing to do? So we might not think of that as an ethical problem, but it is. And the principles that we use to address that are the same principles that we use to address, we might say, hardcore problems in actuarial science and practice. And that's the cool thing about this talk, is that we'll see that the way we solve these knotty problems in our professional life are the same principles that we use to solve personal problems, professional and personal problems. And also, I hope that people have seen by now, we can have fun with this. We can laugh. It's serious, but we don't have to take ourselves too seriously. Rick Wakeman from the group Yes said something that I always thought of. Do you like that group?
Yes. Yeah.
He said, we take our music seriously, but we don't take ourselves seriously. I think that's a useful distinction. So people are going to come away with a renewed understanding of the basic principles that help them make the best decisions as actuaries, and how to solve specific problems. So that there are concrete takeaways. I end with a call to action. So are you like this, David? You go to a meeting, there are lots of useful things you're writing down, maybe in the notes app on your iPhone or on a pad, and all these great things that you intend to do when you get home, and you do none of them. There are too many, you don't know where to start, and no one holds you accountable. Well, to me, that would be a complete waste of time and a terrible return on investment, speaking of finance. So sure. I'm going to give 3 calls to action at the end, just 3. And if people do one of them, they'll be ahead of the game. What I really like to do to hold people accountable and make sure that we actually do what we say we're going to do is 6 weeks afterwards, do a follow-up webinar where we look at what worked well, celebrate some of the success stories, and maybe look at some things that haven't gone well and how we can solve those problems. But this time, it's just the talk.
Great. And I totally hear what you're saying about having too many to-dos coming away from an event. I've done leadership trainings and they throw so much information at you. You think, oh my goodness, where do I start?
Yes.
But you're right. You pick a small number. You say, okay, these are the ones I'm going to work on for the next couple of months.
Yes.
And you build from there.
Yes.
And that's exactly how to do it. Yeah. Bruce, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. Is there anything, final comments you want to share with the audience before we?
I'm just getting warmed up. That's too bad. That no, I'm really well. I do want to say yes. I do want to make one personal statement, because I'm not sure that people outside of, say, the American Academy appreciate what it means to be a member of an academy. And my father, may he rest in peace, was president of the American Academy of Ophthalmology. So I understand how what an honor it is to be inducted into an academy like yours. And I also spoke to the College of Dentistry, which is like an academy and has really high standards for admission. So I believe 120 folks are coming to this meeting, give or take. Is that right?
Give or take, yeah.
And so this really will be great. And I intend for it to be less of a lecture than a town hall discussion.
Great. Well, I'm certainly looking forward to it. And if I get a chance to do a happy hour and listen to your spoons, I'll certainly be there for that.
Bring that single malt. We're going to need it.
Gotcha. As an Irishman, I might bring some Irish whiskey, but carry on.
Okay. Now, can I just say that, have you ever been to the Bushmills Distillery in Northern Ireland? Of course.
Yes, I have, yes.
Turns out that's the oldest distillery in the world, and I think it dates to the 17th century or maybe
even 1600s, 1600 and something or other. Yeah, 59, wow. I think it is, yeah.
I was speaking in Northern Ireland, at Ulster, and my friends took me to that distillery, and wowee, what an experience.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they do good tours. Very much so.
Maybe we could have next year's meeting there.
Maybe we could.
Into the meeting planners.
Yes, indeed. Bruce, that was a fascinating conversation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, David.
Today, I was speaking with Bruce Weinstein, the ethics guy. He's the CEO of the Institute for High Character Leadership, and will be speaking at the Academy's annual meeting, Envision Tomorrow, which takes place in Washington, D.C. on November 2nd and 3rd. You can find out more information about that event and register on our website, actuary.org. My name is David Nolan, and I'm the host of Actuary Voices, a podcast from the American Academy of Actuaries. Please visit our website, actuary.org, for a wealth of information about the work that the Academy does. You can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn as well. And of course, please subscribe to this podcast on your preferred podcast platform.